Hello, welcome to VistaTalks, interesting discussions with interesting people from all around the world. Today's no exception. I'm delighted to be joined by Adam Asnes, the CEO from Lingoport. Adam, it's great to have you here on the show.
Thank you, and thank you for having me, Simon. Always a pleasure.
Well, it's been a while. I'm delighted that we've got you as a guest here on VistaTalks because there's lots of exciting things going on at Lingoport. But before we get into that, for people around the world who may not be working with you or may not be familiar with Adam's story, tell us a bit about your sort of career, a little bit about Lingoport and what you guys work on mainly.
Okay. Well, I won't tell you I was born in a log cabin, but I've been around software for a long time, since really got into tech in the early 90s, maybe 89, 90. And around software development specifically. And I came into this industry because I was like the first sales and marketing person out of a startup in like everybody in like 1998. But I don't come from a linguistics background, which is a little bit unusual. And it's very much at the heart of Lingoport is that we are really focused on the issues around software development. And that is where I saw a niche opportunity for to start a company that there were still, appreciable problems or challenges in developing software that was going to have targets around the world. And it really started when I started the company. We were just a consulting company. It was, very much, the story of the kitchen table and all that. Where I did a lot of consulting around internationalization, and I booked people, booked teams, got some internationalization projects fairly quickly, because there just weren't, there wasn't that many places to go for I-18N. But in not just advising, but actually performing the internationalization, it's a really good background for seeing what are the problems that that happen between localization and development? Because, really internationalization and then localization from the developer's point of view, it's just another requirement, really. And from the localization point of view, it's basically oxygen, like you've got to have that I-18N, and all that. And so we really learned by doing that, there wasn't really a good way to, at scale, internationalize applications, not just one application, but, whole series of applications. The other thing that we saw is that with I-18N, there was often drift. So company might have, there were companies that hired us more than once to internationalize their software because over the years they'd get enough drift that they'd have this backlog of bugs and they would just hire us again to fix it, which is really not very efficient. And we originally came out with our first product, Localizer, as a way to consult more efficiently, but I always had the vision of it being really a cloud-based system, with all the bits that touch IP being locally hosted on machines. So you have this like cloud-based coordination, and then you have all the analysis that happens on the code being behind the company firewall. So you make the security people happy. But anyway, even just doing that, we also saw that, when you update software all the time in a more modern design effort or product release effort that's continuous. So let's say you're going from releasing once a year or twice a year to now you're releasing much more frequently, sometimes weekly. Some organizations it's daily. Little changes, particularly to the UI, become very expensive in terms of processing. And it's amazing to me that you still see companies like, I joke that the most popular localization tool is still Excel. But but there's some truth to that. You still see companies moving files around and the like in very manual methods, or with simple connectors without checks happening. The onus is on developers sometimes to do a lot of things when that doesn't always work, because again, I said developers just look at localization. It's just another requirement. And so they have their primary requirements, which are usually in some feature story that they have to deliver. And localization, well, that's that side thing. So you need ways that are non-invasive for localization to happen, but you need to automate, especially if you're, let's say, an enterprise with, I don't know, 50 teams, 100 teams, thousands of teams that work on multiple products. Automation is really needed, and automation with sophistication, because if you automate something that might break things, then you're just breaking things really fast. And so you want to avoid those, like unnecessary fire drills of, oh, you broke the encoding here, or there's duplicate string IDs. There's all kinds of detail that happen when you develop software that can go wrong if you just automate without checks, without all kinds of dashboards and locale mapping of this team does this way, that team does it that way. You're not going to get the teams to change, so you need some intermediary way to map file formats and the like. So I'm kind of jumping all over, but we went from I18N, and we still have a lot of I18N that we're doing a big internationalization project now. In 2026, it's still happening, that people need help on that. And we have plenty of Globalizer out there, but also Localizer has really taken over as an important product, where you automate the update of software linguistically, and where we've really moved up to design stages. We should probably talk about design and the like.
Look, I mean, you've moved us on nicely, but thank you for giving us the context in terms of Lingoport, its history, obviously deep in the development, the internationalization, the globalization, and the services that you've been sort of known for. But Localizer is definitely something I want to talk about, because there's no secret here, you're working closely with VistaTech as well around this new Lingoport Localizer service, this solution, probably a better way of describing it. And you've kind of touched on it there, but maybe particularly when it comes to faster release cycles, fewer review cycles, eliminating some of the sort of work that we've traditionally had to really, spend time on, and particularly for the design community too. Could you maybe expand on the local story? Because it's big news. What you're doing here is really, really interesting.
Thanks, Simon. So it actually kind of starts with thinking about localization as a delivered service that's integral to how software is created. If you sort of separate from localization, from all kinds of linguistic demands, and you think, okay, if I'm developing software, I want anything that latches onto software development to move as I move, right? Software development really prizes continuous integration, that is, checks, review, seeing your work, being able to demonstrate your work, and not having add-on processes that happen later. And the reason is that when you add on a process later, you open yourselves up to new rounds of testing, new rounds of bug fixing, when your developers have kind of moved on. And so that's why, there's a real common, complaint that, hey, I have these localization issues, and they've been sitting in Jira or whatever your bug tracking system is for years, because the developers have moved on. And the localization, it's not just like a mistranslation. The localization team needs help from developer to get this fix in. And so you really want to maximize that insertion of localization into the software development process. So it's something that's visible, demonstrable during development, not later. And if you look at how software is made now, like years ago, you know, the days of developers creating UIs on their own are kind of like long past. And that you know, the real revolution that's happened, you know, has sort of conglomerated around Figma. Figma is a design system, a design tool, so that you can lay out your UI, you can see it. The developers have something to copy, but also at that point, that's when your UI strings are predominantly created in sort of like forward-thinking, a lot of forward-thinking UI teams. Okay, the UI team develops it. They decide what strings, when I say strings, I mean the user interface in words that go around the interface. And that's where it comes. So during this design phase, and the developers have that visual template of Figma, but Figma doesn't write code. So the developers have to recreate that and, you know, put it in. And of course, the developers may still have something that changes last minute, that, you know, during their process where a string can change, or maybe they add an error message or some dialogue that the designers didn't think of. But for the most part, you really want your core UI being developed in Figma during the design phase of product development. Sorry, I'm getting texts. And so we really looked at that as maybe the first opportunity. And now there are lots of Figma plugins, including our own plugins that we had before, that simply translate, like machine translate, or you know, throw it into Google Translate or whatever, to see an update of what the translation would look like. But it's not really enough. It sort of goes halfway. So we look at Figma and we were like, this is this really cool opportunity. We're going to offer something a little different, because remember, your designers, they don't speak a whole bunch of languages. They speak, you know, whatever their native language is. Maybe if you're lucky, they speak one or two other language, probably not well. They're not translators, right? So if you just throw up translation, that's one thing, but they can't really interpret what that is. That the right word? And you have pseudo localization, which is a technique where you add pad characters around it, but that can be awkward to work with. So we have this sort of system where we say, okay, if these are your 10 languages that you're targeting, we're going to show you the longest string that you'll encounter in this part of the UI. And so the designer can see, they can flip a switch and they can see this longest string, and they can know, oh, I have to make the button a little bit, you know, react differently within this language and the like. And that's really useful. Now, as I said, they have this demonstrable event where they can demo exactly what this looks like for the requirement of localization, right? Not like a linguist, but just what's this going to be like, right? But there's a second part of that, which is, well, there's three parts. There's the longest string and seeing what I'm doing. The next is that you have this incredible tool with Figma of capturing context, right? So context, whether you're using a human or a machine, context will help your translation happen. And what I mean by that is there are words, the example I like to use is a coat, right? So a word like coat can be something you wear, or let's say it's a coat of paint. So we have a client that makes, they make, almost everybody has software, right? But they make industrial paint, right? And they have an application where you choose the right paint properties and consistency for whatever your, you know, requirements are. And so coat means something very different to them than something, you know, if you were selling, you know, e-commerce sites selling clothes. So within that UI, you can see that and that visual aspect becomes a prompt both for like if you're using an LLM or if you're using a human. Now you have something that can persist. So that's the second area, and we put a lot into Localizer to kind of take every string and locate where that is on the image, so that's there. And you can also use visual context with everything from a screenshot, from automatically capturing it on web apps and the like. So there's a lot of ease in gathering that visual context and being able to pass that off to an LLM or TMS or whatever you're using, or a vendor portal. But then the last, probably the biggest thing that Simon's excited about is that we take these strings, and when they go out for translation and they come back, we actually apply a what's called a key, and we put it right in the software repository for the developers. So instead of waiting until the product development is done, the developer has all the strings that are translated back from Simon's team at VistaTalks. They have it all back in their repository. They just have to put in the key. They don't have to later think of, and the localization manager doesn't later have to like send it out. I mean, of course, if there's last minute changes, Localizer is going to pick that up automatically. Like there's nobody has to remember to do anything. It'll get picked up. But the fact is that you're actually simultaneously making those localized files available to the developers as they're building their software. So now you're truly delivering localization as an integrated service with development, not waiting till some magic point where you feel like you have enough put together to send out for localization. It's done. It starts in Figma and pushes back to dev. There's a lot of flexibility in how those keys are rendered so that everybody's happy, everybody gets it the way they like to do it, but it's there. The translations are like there, ready for the developers to plug in. It's done. So we call that process Figma to dev. And I took a really long time to explain all that, but it's
well,
very
look,
cool.
It is exciting,
Yeah.
and
Right.
it's a different way of working.
Right.
Now,
Right.
Figma, I'm sure everybody's listening. I think most people know about Figma.
Mm-hmm. Right.
Figma's just exploded as a design tool, right? There are
Right.
millions and millions and millions of people using Figma all over the world.
It's like 90+ market share. It's
It's
crazy.
huge,
Yeah.
absolutely huge. And
Yeah.
enterprise customers, they've got teams of people
Mm-hmm.
using Figma, and Figma
Right.
it's phenomenal. I think at their last quarterly announcement, they dropped like another 50 features in. This thing is
Uh-huh.
really good. So
Uh-huh.
we've got the power of Figma that's being used anyway in enterprise customers and customers around the world.
Mm-hmm.
We've got millions and millions of users who use Figma. But what you're talking about, and what we really like, is the Lingoport localizer. It sort of automates that entire localization pipeline. So from Figma straight to production, that you're sort of enabling the designers. They're seeing those translations in sort of real time. You're
Mm-hmm.
eliminating that need, as you're saying, so for that. Well, we better extract the strings, send it for translation, all that stuff. This new way of working is kind of it's resulted in translations that sort of flow, right? They go from Figma,
Mm-hmm.
dev, obviously, um,
Mm-hmm.
and then production, right? So it's fewer
Right.
cycles that
Right.
I was mentioning earlier. You've got
Mm-hmm.
faster releases, which that's really important in the software space, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's really important in lots of industries. So to get those sort of content, those assets, that design, that software out faster, enabling faster releases, but also what's really good is at a much improved quality. Um, and we've been doing some joint press around this, right? So we've kind of been talking about localization at the speed of design because we really like
Mm-hmm.
the development that you guys are working through with customers, live customers today. We're seeing real tangible benefits. It's expanding rapidly. And when we combine that with something like VistaTech Verifier, we combine Lingoport's Localizer with VistaTech Verifier. The Verifier then, as you were saying, it's allowing for things like AI to do QA checks, checking for spelling, profanities, language accuracy, any modality issues in the translation. And we're also helping to reduce translation issues and ensure that the translations in the new workflows are of very high quality. So the application from a VistaTech Verifier perspective is designed to identify any specific errors in translation, and it can be applied to any sort of form of content. So when you've got this sort of working together of the tools like Localizer, like Verifier from Lingoport and VistaTech, it's a very powerful solution for companies. And the Figma world, as we were saying earlier, it is huge. So it's really exciting. And you must be seeing some massive improvements with the customers you're working at with launching Localizer, right, Adam?
Yes, yes. So what we see is a lot of scale and speed, and I have yet to meet the localization team that isn't understaffed. That scale and automation becomes very important. But you mentioned a really important thing. If we're trying to go fast and we're using the best possible speedy tools and workflows and the like, we can set up an awful lot in terms of, I mentioned context, but there's also like project level prompts and system level prompts. So we can get a lot set to do that first pass of localization very quickly. The fact that you have VistaTech Verifier means that now we can focus on what needs review and what needs to kick back and at a much earlier stage. And remember that if something needs review, the linguist now has context. They have that visual picture of what's going on also. So they're, one of the challenges with humans reviewing humans is that you always have differences of opinion. But once you have a picture, you have something to anchor that. So you have this quality review, you have a picture of what this needs to be. So you really are optimizing, A, where you're going to fix, B, the time it takes to point resources at that and get the work done. And then lastly, the turnaround becomes nice and smooth. So again, speed is really important. And there's a great value for speed and efficiency with that regard. Remember, every time you have to turn the crank to fix bugs, to fix problems, it's, somebody has to initiate the project, somebody has to pass it off, somebody has to say, oh, yes, this was done correctly. With Verifier, you are eliminating that cycle of review considerably. You're just targeting at what you need to do. So you can deliver fast.
And it's a shift left, right? I mean,
Right.
moving this earlier because
Right.
it's kind of people sort of like trying to imagine, if localization, it wasn't a step after the development that's been done. But if you could shift left, you can move that earlier in the process, which is we're talking about having accomplished here. This release, this new service offering, it introduces, I suppose, a brand new approach to totally reinventing the localization workflow, and particularly in the design workflow. I mean, that's exactly where people need to be, because as you say, you've got a picture, it's in real time, it's right there where you need it, it's moving everything instead of a post activity to a during activity. And that's such an important aspect, because it integrates it directly into the design, the development workflows, and it gets rid of, you were talking, sort of half joking about Excel earlier. Gets rid of all manual file handling stuff, doesn't it? Complexities of that. But ultimately, the payoff is you get a faster, more accurate global product delivery, don't you?
Yes, yes, and that's what we're really all about.
Mm.
You want, one of the tenets of agile development is that you have to be able to show your work. You have to be able to demonstrate that it works. Right at the end of the sprint, it's people use tools like Loom and the like to here's a video of this is what I did, and they have their pull requests and their reviews together with other, their code reviews with developers. They have to show how it works, right? Well, localization needs to show its work as it's on the same timeline, right? That's you want to have localization really accepted into the DNA of the software development team. Well, you need to be able to show your work in a timely fashion with how they are working. I think that's really a huge opportunity for localization teams all over the world to gain in terms of the mindset of product development.
Yeah, it's what they
Yeah.
call a win-win, isn't
Right.
it? I mean,
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
kind of
Yeah.
what people need. And I
Right.
think with
Right.
um, the VisTech verifier side of things as well,
Hmm.
just maybe if I can expand on that for a second, 'cause I think it's helpful for the context of why this sort
Yeah.
of
Yeah.
partnered solution is working, is that AI-powered QA work that's identifying those errors, right?
Hmm.
Whether you're
Hmm.
using LLMs yourself, whether you've got a bank of human reviewers, as you were saying, whatever TMS you're using,
Hmm.
that VistaTech verifier is helping you meet the standards that are required. And that's whether that's a standard that you have as a company, whether it's a regulated industry standard, a compliance standard. That's really important work. And the fact that we can get these services working with customers together, it's that faster approval process. It's building confidence in the delivery mechanisms and workflows. And it really is, I've seen it dynamically changing the way organizations are working. So it is that, I know it's a cliche, but it is a win-win for everybody because they get what they need. It works. They've moved it earlier in the process. And, through that new workflow that we're talking about here, through Lingoport's localizer and through sort of whether it's human expertise on our back end doing the quality checks, also doing the AI quality checks using Verifier, all that's then feeding straight back in at the dev level, which I think is pretty unique. And the organizations and the people that are experiencing that are saying this is how it should have been from the start, right?
Well, we didn't know how to do it.
No, that's what I mean. But if only
Yeah.
I'd have
Yeah. Yeah.
had, if only I'd have
Yeah.
had this five
Yeah.
years
Yeah.
ago, right?
Right. Right. Right.
Um,
Right. You
so
know, I,
that's
I,
pretty
I
cool.
I also think just the push in LLMs is really another factor pushing that. I mean, if you just feed the strings for user interface into an LLM, well, good luck, right? Um, you know, but that starts you thinking about like, well, what helps both humans and an LLM to deliver better? And context is the answer. So which is a very different way of thinking than just applying. Hey, we're just going to apply an MT, and we're going to look. Then we're going to review like source, target. And just kind of go through a checklist because you're a translator and you're paid often by the words, so you got to go quick and like there's no time for that. So context kind of elevates, just like you have context in like a Word doc often. Now you have context for the software. You have like what's going on around this source and target, which helps. Not just the LLM, but it helps the human also. So that's. I mean, there's so much here that we can talk about that's new. And again, when you have all that speed and all those words coming through, being able to hone in with a quality evaluation on what's important is another part of it. You know, so
Well,
it
I
it's
don't think
sometimes
we're
astounding how many words you end up with. So
Well, I don't
legal
think we're
approach.
exaggerating, Adam. I
Yeah.
mean, this is a breakthrough really for localization and design.
Oh, thanks. Yeah,
And
that's cool.
I think I think it's more and more people are going to benefit from this. So I mean, if
Hmm.
people are using Figma in their enterprise, for example,
Hmm.
in that design environment, or
Hmm.
if this conversation sounds interesting to them, we've got an event coming up in February, right? So
Right.
we're
Right.
working on, at the time of recording, this event will be coming up. And if people want to find out more about it, there's going to be a URL that you can go to. We'll put it in the show notes as well, so people can actually go there, because we'd love to get people to come and maybe see a demo of the
Yeah.
localizer,
Yeah.
hear a bit more about VistaTech Verifier too, and see how this is really fixing, as Adam was saying, those speed, those translations, getting rid of the requirement for post review cycles again in real time, straight back in at a dev level. It really is worth checking out. So we've got an upcoming event, and I just wanted to take a minute just to maybe plug
Hmm.
that, Adam, because I think people can come and see it see what that looks like, right? Because we're going to be able
Hmm.
to show them a bit more when we
Hmm.
have some more time. So I'm looking forward to that. And I suppose the other thing I wanted to just say as well, if I can, and I don't want this to turn into me just waxing lyrical about the VistaTech products and the Lingoport products, but uh, VistaTech invested heavily in an AI hub, and they weren't the first to market with AI. We took a very cautious approach in holding back as well, to make sure that we understood what was required in the industry, and also understood what worked and what didn't work. You sort of reminded me of it there a moment ago when you were saying, if you just think you can throw this into AI, good luck, because it just doesn't work. You need people that know what they're doing, that build this stuff behind the scenes, so you can get the output that's required. And we've spent many years working with this. I know AI is kind of
Hmm.
a new buzzword, but many years, we've been working with machine translation, and we feel that some services like governance is really important, and something that's missed by a lot of people in the area, particularly, as I was saying, around regulated industries. For example, if you're in the life sciences or healthcare industries or the financial fintech type areas, you need to be a lot more wary of how you're deploying your AI solutions in a
Hmm.
translation localization environment. And we still see a requirement. We're big proponents of AI plus human expertise. And I think with Localizer and Verifier, and that AI plus human expertise at the core of what we're doing, I think it's a real winning combination. And I know that sounds like a sales pitch, but I just want people to come along and see what we're really doing here, because there's a difference between AI hype and new tools and services hype, and actually things that have been tried and tested that work, that actually make a difference to how you operate at a workflow and an efficiency level.
All right. I'm going to add one more thing, and I'm throwing you and VistaTech a compliment. We work with, by the nature of Lingoport's work, we end up working with a number of localization companies, really, all the big guys and all that. And I'm always excited about common customers with VistaTech, because I know that my technical team can interface with VistaTech's technical team with the best interests of the customers in mind, with a really timely and good solution. Because, with all this cool product stuff, it really takes the connection and the sort of joint mission, that matters. And you simply cannot get away from the people and the ability of those people to sort of get the message and deliver the service that clients really should expect. And so I'm actually very proud of that, as a that's not a product, that's not a feature. That's how you do business, and I'm very proud of doing that together with VistaTech. So
Yeah, well, that's nice.
yeah,
Thank you,
yeah.
Adam. And I think whether people want to get better use of LLMs, to get better use of their
Hmm.
prompt engineering, to use tools better.
Hmm.
Ultimately, for all the products that we can throw out, it comes down to a human connection, doesn't it? It comes down to
Hmm.
somebody explaining it and saying, well, this is how it can work. This is what definitely won't work. And this is what I think you need. And that's why we were
Hmm.
keen to focus on things like consultancy and human discussion,
Hmm. Hmm.
because we can get very carried away that everything's just, press the button and it all magically happens. And as you quite
Hmm.
rightly said, that very, very seldom works. You need people that have been around a little while, that know what they're doing, that have been working on this. And Lingoport's been at this, what, 2001, I think, maybe a little bit before that. I'm not sure.
Yeah, it was kitchen table business in
Yeah,
2001.
right. And
Yeah.
we VistaTech 30, we're on the road to 30 years next year.
Wow. All right.
So,
Cool.
like we, it's not the first time we're looking at a
Uh-huh.
new technology here,
Right.
but
Right.
it's really good to get into this level of details. Now, if before we have a joint event together to show people more about Lingoport Localizer and VistaTech Verifier, if people want to reach out and connect with you, Adam, or find out more directly, what's the best way of them reaching out to you or to Lingoport?
Well, to me personally, you can either do that via Lingo. I'm fortunate I have an odd enough, at least, well, certain part of the world, my name is less odd, but I'm the only Adam Asnes that I've ever found online, and I'm very easy to find. But if you just send adam@lingoport.com, that gets to me. And I'm easy to find on LinkedIn also. So
Very good. No problem.
yeah,
Well, look,
yeah.
I'd encourage people to go
Thanks.
and check out
Yeah.
Lingoport, check out the website, check out VistaTech's website, obviously. Stay tuned. Keep abreast of our social media channels as well, because both on Lingoport and on the Vista Talks and the VistaTech channels on social media, we'll be sharing more details about the upcoming event. We'd love you to join us and to find out more about this great solution that we've been talking about here today. It's not hype, it works, and we'd love you to come and see what's going on here.
And I'm looking forward to that webinar. Also, I'll let some of my team do the heavy lifting on the demos and stuff like that, so I can
Very
sit
good.
and watch. All right, good,
Well,
good.
Adam, it's been a pleasure to have you on Vista Talks. I'm sorry it took us so long to get you on as a guest, but I'm glad that we chose this moment in time, particularly with all the exciting development work you
Yeah,
guys are
yeah.
doing. So, thanks for being on the show, Adam. It's been a pleasure.
Thanks for having me.